Here, so we're moving on to seasoning. So seasoning is a follow-on from conversion. So in conversion, basically we're cutting down a tree and we're converting the tree into planks of wood that we can make things out of. Okay. Seasoning is the next step. So seasoning is the part where we dry these planks of wood. Okay, so the planks of wood need to be dried. So very quickly, timber seasoning. Definition means what is it? So what is it? It is the drying out of wood. Okay, so it's the drying out of wood. The reasons we season timber, so there's 4 reasons. The first reason is that timber is lighter and stronger after we season it because there's less or no moisture on it. It's dry, so it's lighter. It's more stable, which means it's less likely to shrink, twist, split or warp. Okay, so when it's dry, basically there's less chance of things going wrong with it. Okay, seasoned timber is easy to work with. Okay, if I give you a big piece of wood and it's wet because it's lying outside, you'll find it very hard to cut it, very hard to plane it, etc. It'll be impossible to sand it. But if I give you a piece of dry wood that's seasoned, like I do in the woodwork room, it's a lot easier for you to work with it and make stuff out of it. Okay. And when you season the wood as well, it's resistant to fungal attacks. So basically it'll not rot and stuff because it's not wet. Okay, so it won't rot. Some key terms. Okay, now there's 3 key terms we need to know. The first one is relative humidity. Okay, so relative humidity. So now this is a little bit complicated. So relative humidity, what does it mean? It is the amount of water vapor, so it's just water, so the amount of water in the air, so in the air where you're breathing now, it's the amount of water at a given temperature in relation to the maximum amount of water vapor the air can hold. Okay, so basically the air can only hold so much water. Okay, so if you're outside and it's wet, obviously there's a lot of water in the air. Okay, so that means that if you have a piece of wood and it's outside and there's a lot of water in the air, there's going to be a lot of water in the wood. Okay, so it's the amount of water vapor in the air at a given temperature, so it depends what temperature it is, in relation to the maximum amount of water vapor the air can hold. Now, relative humidity is probably the only one here that if you don't remember, it's okay, because it doesn't come up in the exams. Okay. So relative humidity, it's probably the hardest to remember. Okay, it's the least likely to come up in any exams. Okay, now the next 2 you do need to know. Moisture content. Okay, the short for moisture content is MC. We'll see it later. If you get asked in an exam, what's MC? It's moisture content. So it describes the amount of moisture in the wood. So in other words, the moisture content tells you how much moisture is in the wood, and it's always expressed as a percentage. So I could say to you, there's 20% moisture content in that piece of wood I give you. Okay, so that means 20% of that wood has moisture in it. Okay, we'll be talking about moisture content in more detail later. Okay, so moisture content is a number that's expressed as a percentage. So similar to your test result, you get a percentage, and it describes how much moisture is in the wood. Equilibrium moisture content. So the wood will continuously gain or release moisture until it reaches a balance with the surrounding air. Okay, so if it's wet outside and you have a piece of wood outside, it's going to be wet. It's going to gain moisture. Okay, if in the middle of July it's really warm outside, there's not a cloud in the sky, and you have a piece of wood outside, it's going to release moisture because it's going to dry. Okay, so the equilibrium moisture content, basically the moisture content of the wood will reflect the environment it's in at any given time. Okay, so if you have a wooden fence outside these days, if you go and test the moisture content, I'd say it's very high because it's wet basically 24/7. Okay, if you get 2 weeks in the summer where it's really warm and there's no rain, the moisture content will be really low. Okay, it'll be so dry. Okay, so that's what equilibrium moisture content is. You could get asked in an exam In fact, it comes up very, very often in the junior cert exams as well. What is EMC? So if you're asked for that, it's equilibrium moisture content. Now there's two types of seasoning. The first one's air seasoning. Okay. Air seasoning is the natural type of seasoning. Basically, what you have here is a shed with no walls on it. So it's just got 4 posts in the corner. It's an open shed. Got a sloped roof, so that the water doesn't come in from the top. And basically the air or the wind will blow through all the sides and dry the timber. Okay, as you can see, we have our stickers in between the planks, which we already learnt about in conversion. Okay, we call the stickers and the planks together, so this whole thing is called a stack. Okay, so the stack is the stickers plus the wood. Okay, underneath it, so the level surface is just the ground. The bricks here, the bricks are used to keep the bottom layer of wood basically from touching the ground, which means the air can dry it from the bottom. If your bottom plank is flat on the ground, it won't dry very quickly. Okay, and we have a cross beam then at the bottom as well. It's basically the same thing as our stickers, but it's just a stronger piece of wood because it has to take the load of all the planks. Okay, and again that helps allow the air to circulate through the planks. Okay, so the only new things here in air seasoning, we already know the stickers, we already know the plank of wood, everybody knows what a sloped roof is, and the level surface is just the ground. The bricks is just to keep it off the ground. The beam is just a bigger sticker which goes at the very bottom, and the stack is the stickers plus the wood, well, plus the beams as well. Okay, so air seasoning. So the planks are laid in the battens and raised off the ground. Okay, so the battens is just another word they're using for stickers. The stack must not be wider than 2 meters in thickness to allow the airflow. Okay, so see from here, where my mouse is here, the whole way over to here, that cannot be any more than 2 meters, because if it's too wide or too thick, the air or the wind will not blow through it properly. Okay, the stack, the boards are all of equal thickness or width, and they should be stacked together as we've seen. The stickers allow the air to pass through the stack. They should be the same species as the seasoned timber to prevent staining. Okay, so if I cut down an oak tree and all these planks are cut, from an oak tree, then the stickers should be oak. Okay, so that's what they mean by it should be the same species. Okay. Now, air seasoning, the advantages and the disadvantages. You need to know at least 3 of each, and there is only 3 advantages. So it requires no energy, it's completely natural. Okay, it's weather dependent. There's a few people trying to get on here, so just give me a minute. Okay. Right, so we go back now. So the advantages of air seasoning: requires no energy because it's all natural. There's no special labour needed. Okay, so you just leave it until it dries. It's cheap because there's no expensive equipment needed. The disadvantages is it's very slow. Okay, if the weather's really, really wet, it's going to be really, really slow. You can't control it. Okay, so it's going to be slow. It's weather dependent, as we said. If the weather's bad, it's obviously going to be slower to dry. There's a large area of space required. Okay, so it's a big shed area. MC again, what is it? We should know what it is. It's moisture content. So the moisture content of 18% is only achievable. So by air seasoning, you cannot get the moisture content below 18%, which means it can't be used for furniture. Okay. We have little control over the final moisture content, but we can't control it because it's all nature basically. And the boards are prone to insect and fungi attack, whereas they can rot because they're wet. Okay, they can get wet. Now, another thing, the ends can split. Okay. The ends of the board can split if the ends dry too quickly. Alright, so there's 3 ways we can prevent this. Number 1 is to paint the ends or put wax on them. So you can see here, this is number 1, to paint the ends. It's just the 2 ends of the planks. not the whole plank. So I think I might have showed you that in the woodwork room. So I have a few planks up the front of the room and there might be blue paint or green paint or something on them, so it just stops the planks from splitting. Number 2 is fixing a metal cleat. So it's just a metal, this is just a metal bar. Okay, goes along here. And the last method is not the most effective, but what you can do is you can put like a cloth over the ends of the boards and it'll reduce how quickly they dry. Okay, so they're not dry as quickly because they're covered. Okay, so paint them, put metal cleats on the ends, or else cover them with a cloth. Okay. Now, the second type of seasoning is the most common method, and it's called compartment kiln, but it's just a kiln dry. So we call this a kiln, K-I-L-N. Okay. So again, you have your planks of wood and your stickers. Okay, so this is your stack. The only difference is it's on a trolley with wheels, so it's a lot easier to move. Okay, you don't need a forklift to move it, or you don't have to lift each board individually, you can just push the trolley. Now, where it's different is up here. There's heating coils. So there's 6 red heating coils. Okay, so they pump heat into this room or chamber, or kiln as we call it. The steam jets, so hot steamy air comes in through these 2 jets. We have a fan that lets the moisture out and a vent that lets the moisture out. The fan also helps to move the heat around the whole room. Okay, so you can see there's more to it than just natural seasoning. So it's a special kind of chamber or kiln. The timber is stacked on a trolley, as we said. The heated steam circulates through the stack. Okay, so the fan helps to push the heat around. The moisture evaporates gradually until a desired MC, which again is moisture content, is reached as the relative humidity is reduced. Okay, so basically here what happens is at the start the relative humidity is high. There's a lot of warm moisture pumped in. So if you think of a steam room in the swimming pool, okay, it's hot and it's wet, isn't it? So that's kind of what it's like at the start. Okay, so they pump a lot of steam with moisture in it and heat into the chamber or the kiln. Okay, and over time they gradually reduce the amount of moisture that gets in. Okay, so they're reducing the relative humidity. They're reducing the amount of moisture that goes into the chamber. It's still going to be warm, but they're going to reduce the moisture, and that will take down the moisture content. So we can control how quickly and how slowly the planks dry, and we can also control what moisture content percentage we dry the wood to. Okay, so that, as you can imagine, is why it would be very popular. So just to go over it again quickly, so the fans circulate the steam and warm air around. Okay, so the fans will blow the air evenly around the room. So if you didn't have a fan, the hot air would go to the top and the cold air would be at the bottom. So the fan just pushes the air around the whole room. The steam jets, so they pipe heated steam into the kiln, so they pipe heat in. The heating coils, they warm the air, so it's like a warm pipe basically. Okay, and the relative humidity is gradually reduced, so again we can reduce the amount of moisture that we pump in with the steam jets, and we can reduce the amount of heat that comes through the coils, and the trolley allows us to move the stack easily. Okay, advantages and disadvantages. So advantages, we can get a lower moisture content. We can basically get any moisture content we want because we can control it. We can provide uniform circulation of air, so we can obviously make sure, like if you have natural air seasoning, you cannot control the wind. The wind will blow whatever way the wind wants to blow. Okay, but here we can control the air circulation using our fans. Okay, defects associated with seasoning can be reduced, so we can have less defects in the timber. Makes it easier to work with. It's quicker due to control of temperature and humidity, so again we can control the temperature and the humidity. Fungi and insects are killed during the drying process, so we don't get any rotting or anything. in the wood. Remember, the bark of the tree protects the wood. So once we cut them into planks, we're cutting the bark off, which means the wood's no longer protected from insects and funguses. Okay, so air seasoning, natural air seasoning, the wood can rot, can get attacked, but in the kiln it won't, because the heat will kill the insects if they do come in. Okay. And finally, precise drying rates for various species of timber can be applied. So certain timbers you can dry quicker than others without them kind of cracking. Okay. Disadvantages, so as you can see, there's very little disadvantages, whereas with air seasoning there was very little advantages. So it's very obvious which one's the most common. Okay, kiln seasoning is the most common. The disadvantages of kiln seasoning: you need somebody who's skilled, a skilled operator, so somebody who knows what they're doing. They're basically trained, they know what they're doing. It's expensive because of all the heat and the labour, so you need somebody to control it all the time, and it requires a lot of energy. Okay, so it's not as good for the environment as you can imagine. Moisture testing. Okay, so there's two ways. This is the last thing we need to look over. There's two ways we can test. Okay, so when air seasoning, the moisture content of a plank must be tested. Okay, one row of stickers are notched to allow a plank to be withdrawn and tested. Okay, so here we have our planks of wood, here we have our stickers going across. You can see here they've cut out a notch out of this sticker. Okay, that will allow us to take this plank out of the stack when we're air seasoning. Remember, air seasoning is this one, the natural one. We'll be able to take a plank out easily when we have a notch taken out of it, because there's a big hole in it. So we can take it out and we can test the wood to see the moisture. Okay, there's two ways we can test wood. Okay, the first one we're going to look at is method 2. Basically, we have a device here. It's got 2 pins in it here. Okay, so it's got 2 pins there. You stick the 2 pins into the wood, and it gives you, as you can see, this one, it's obviously upside down when it's in the wood. Okay, but that is 14%, which means that this wood has a moisture content of 14%. Okay, so that's handy. You just stick in the 2 metal ends and it gives you a percentage in a couple of seconds. If we look over, where does 14% fit in our table? 13 to 14%, bedroom furniture, spaces heated occasionally. Okay, so that means if that wood is dried, you can use it for bedroom furniture. Okay, now in terms of moisture contents, the lowest moisture content we can really get is about 10%. So 9 to 11% is basically, so this is right. So I'm going to explain this. We'll take a bit of time to explain this, right? This is kind of important. So if you have your wood dried to 9 to 11%, that is as dry as you can get the wood, so there's basically no moisture left in that wood. Okay, so we can use that wood then to make furniture in areas that are really warm, basically. So if you think of your sitting room, or if you think wherever you have your fire on in your house all the time, imagine you had a mantelpiece there that was made out of wood, or you had any wooden furniture around it. It would be warm all the time. Okay, so you want very little moisture in it. Okay, again, 11 to 13% then living room furniture. So most furniture in a house are between 11 and 14% moisture content. Okay, if they're higher, obviously they're going to be very wet, which means they'll dry inside because it's warm inside your house. Okay, they'll dry inside and the wood can crack and twist and stuff. Okay, and outside furniture then is around 16% to 20%, because obviously they're going to get wet in wet weather, they're going to dry in dry weather. Okay, so you can't really control them. Anything that's above 20% moisture content can rot. Okay, so it needs to be below 20% so it doesn't rot. So that's why a lot of wood outside will eventually rot over time if it's wet all the time, because it's got a moisture content of more than 20% pretty much all the time, especially in Ireland. Okay, the second method is the oven test method. Okay, so one, weigh the original sample of wood. So you have a piece of wood, you want to weigh it to get the weight. That's called the wet weight. Then you dry the piece of wood in the oven. You take it out and you weigh it again and you record the result. This is called the dry weight. what you can do is you can repeat this until there's no more weight loss, and then the moisture content can be calculated this way. So wet weight minus the dry weight divided by the dry weight multiplied by 100. Okay, so in this case 250 minus 225 over 250 multiplied by 100 gives you a moisture content of 10%. Okay, we'll go through this in class more whenever we get back to school. Okay, but that is the seasoning chapter. That's the final chapter we need to do. Okay, so as I say, that's our seasoning chapter, and let's see now if I can